Well, hi everyone, and in Australia it's Wednesday, the 2nd of October, and we're in Australia, John.
We are, Hoodie. We're back here on foreign land.
We're back on foreign land, having been across the Dutch, as the Kiwis call it, a wonderful meeting in New Zealand. Before we talk briefly about that, I want to interview our special guest today from Saskatchewan in Canada. We have Ted Kuntz, and Ted has been a mighty stalwart in the protection of children against Big Pharma, basically, and we're going to unpack that. Ted, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you both. Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to this conversation, and also thank you for your good work in helping to bring awareness to the tyranny that both your country and my country face.
Ted, we were talking just before recording that there was a time in the world when most people who lived everywhere else would have said, if this all goes to custard, we need to be in Canada, New Zealand, or Australia. I don't think they think that way anymore. What has happened?
It's pretty shocking, isn't it? I mean, 5 years ago, I think the three countries that you mentioned were the envy of many people in the world. And now when I travel, people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you're from Canada." It's hard to believe how far our countries collectively have turned against the people, and they've become what we thought was a democracy have become dictatorships, and what we thought was a good public health care system has become medical abuse. I mean, I think all of us are still in shock.
We are indeed. And before we get right into unpacking your story, it's interesting because we're talking to you in Canada. John and I from Australia were in New Zealand talking in Auckland last weekend, and I was the week before in Christchurch. And there is a spirit between the two nations in the south, New Zealand and Australia. And I think that extends to Canada as well. I think being former Commonwealth countries, the spirit of those standing up in New Zealand and Australia is building. It's palpable. You can almost touch it. And I think it's the same in Canada. And I think there are great opportunities for all of us who are fighting this battle to join together and build a force, a spirit together that can really change things. And I think it beholds all of us to do that. Um, John, how did you find the gathering in Auckland? How good was that?
Yeah, really uplifting, Hoodie. And what it does, it brings people with like minds together to help fight this battle because you don't know what you don't know. So really, really good to be there and just to feel that presence of what they're going through over in New Zealand. And I'm sure it's the same in other countries, but ultimately we're all facing the same plight. So to get on the same page and network with all these guys so we can fight back even harder is very important.
It really is, and the spirit, as we said, was just incredible. And we thank the New Zealand Doctors
Mm.
SOS, which stands for Speaking Out with Science, for the incredible work they did. They pulled together two amazing events that went for about 9 hours, starting early in the morning and finishing at
Wow.
sundown. They were incredible events by incredible doctors and supported by a wonderful group of people in the background,
Mm.
sponsors, and it was just an awesome event. And I think a lot of good's going to come from that. And I think so much good will come from our conversation with Ted Kuntz this morning. I think you've got a master's degree in education, Ted.
I do. I do. My specialty was in psychology,
Right.
and so in the university that I went to, University of British Columbia, the clinical psychology department was in the Masters of Education or in the education department for some reason. So
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting field and much needed now. We need to unpack a whole bunch of things that are going on
mm,
psychologically around the world. We're a bit of a mess. But let me go through your story. Your bio says that you're a father, a grandfather, a
mm,
medical choice activist, an author and educator, sorry, and retired psychotherapist. Your journey to examine the claims of the vaccine industry began after your son Joshua was severely injured by the DPT injection in 1984. After years of researching the medical literature, Ted learned that the medical industry has been dishonest with health consumers on the safety, effectiveness, and necessity of vaccination. Isn't that the truth? Ted believes that the effort to deny citizens their right to make medical decisions for themselves and their children is one of the greatest threats to humanity today. And no one can argue with that, although many are trying, and I think on loose ground. And you quoted as saying, if we lose the capacity for choice over what is injected into ourselves and our children, then we are no longer free citizens. Protecting medical choice and demanding honesty, transparency, and accountability are the most important issues in your life. That's true for all of us. Ted is the current president of Vaccine Choice Canada, and there's their logo over his shoulder. And he is the chair of the National Citizens Inquiry, co-founder of Freedom Rising, and the host of a weekly Freedom Leaders meeting. Ted is also an accomplished author, and Ted's books include Dare to Question, Peace Begins with Me, How Can I Wake Up When I Don't Know I'm Asleep? Boy, I'm loving these titles. And A New Parent's Guide to Understanding Vaccination. And we will put links to these books in the description as we post this today, and I'm sure it's going to generate a lot of interest. Ted, great to have you with us.
Thanks again for inviting me.
So you've been working extensively with Meryl Dorey and Anita Huffmeister and the crew from the AVN in Australia, who, as we discussed prior to recording, have been up against it for 30 years, as I'm sure you have. The tyranny mounted against them, the offence mounted against them has been palpable. And sadly, John and I have only come to learn just how deep and dark their battle has been in recent times, wishing we'd known this much earlier. But sadly, the way the mainstream media are around the world at the moment, these causes which are vital don't get any attention. And so we want to unpack that with you today. Ted, tell us about how you started this journey. We talked about your son, Joshua. What's happening with him now? What happened at the time? And let's lead from there.
Well, that's how I got into this journey. I was like most parents, is that I just bought the prevailing narrative that vaccines are safe and effective and important. And we took him to the doctor for his very first vaccine shot at 5 months of age. And Josh had a severe reaction to it. He developed an uncontrolled seizure disorder, which he had his entire life. And it was actually it was a very debilitating condition. To give you some idea of the intensity of his seizure disorder, at one point in his life, he was seizing 12 to 15 times a day, and each seizure was 15 to 20 minutes long. And so, John, you would know from your experience what that looks like and the damage that does. And so Josh required 24-hour care for his entire life. He could never be left unattended because the seizures were never controlled. In the school system, he had to have a one-on-one aide attached to him at all times. We lived in and out of our children's hospital in Vancouver, British Columbia, where we lived. And he passed away in 2017, they believe, from a seizure.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
No.
Well, it was a very difficult journey, and the blessing in the journey is that Josh woke me up to the tyranny, the medical tyranny that we face on this planet. And it took me a few years of research to realize how bad things were. But I now believe that vaccines are responsible for most of the chronic disease that our children face today. They promote vaccines as one of the miracles of modern medicine. I think it might be the largest disaster upon humanity outside of world wars. This is maiming and killing our children. And I don't think anybody gets spared by it. I often ask the question when I'm interviewing people, how many children do you think are vaccine injured? And I don't know what your answers would be, but my answer is all of them. Yeah. You can't inject these kinds of poisons into our infants and children and they not be harmed. Now, I recognize my son's injury was at one end of the spectrum, but when you begin to know what the adverse effects of these vaccines are, you start to see it all around you. You see it in the children, you see it in their learning disability, you see it in their autism, their allergies, their asthma, attention deficit disorder. You see it in the lack of synchronicity in the facial muscles in their face, which shows evidence of neurological injury. And it's like you're walking amongst the war wounded. It breaks my heart to see what we're doing to our children, and I'm sure it does yours. That's why you're here.
Well, I've got a granddaughter who's almost 9 years of age now, and when she was an infant, she's one of twins, non-identical twins, and after receiving, I think, 7 different potions in one hit, she went into months and months of seizures, and she seems to have recovered from that now, but who can tell? I mean, it was horrible. And her twin brother, no side effects at all. But I mean, we still don't know. And you talk about ADHD, everyone talks about ADHD and autism and all the other disorders that are on the rise at the moment. John, all your kids were vaccinated, and you've got 6 kids.
Yeah, all of them, Hoodie. And I think what Ted said is pretty accurate. I mean, they're all injured. We just don't know when and where it'll be exposed. That's the reality. But I suppose, Ted, the one blessing that this COVID madness has given us is it has uncovered this to so many. I mean, Hoodie and I would not be speaking to you today if it hadn't been for COVID. Do you
Well,
see?
John, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, you mentioned this. The group in Australia has been fighting this battle for over 30 years. In Canada, Vaccine Choice Canada has been doing this for 42 years. And the lawyer that we retained to fight a legal battle with our government over the COVID measures, he would pokingly say that the best thing that happened to Vaccine Choice Canada was COVID, but because before that, we were the fringe of the fringe of the fringe. And now all of a sudden we're invited into conversations that we were never invited into before. And I've actually had a number of medical doctors that have apologized that they didn't do their homework, that they were part of the group that was discrediting our work over the many decades. And I can actually remember 2 of them that actually wept in front of me to say, I'm so sorry, I was part of the problem. And so the gift is, I mean, we can't change things until we acknowledge it. And unfortunately, it had to get this bad. And for our governments to become absolutely tyrannical in imposing these injections upon, right down to our infants, our 6-month-old infants. I mean, it's tragic what's happened over the last 4 years. And I believe that, this is, it's part of my introduction that you talked about the National Citizens Inquiry. And I don't know if you're familiar with that in Australia. We conducted 27 days of hearings into the government's response to COVID. And the idea was that we couldn't trust government to investigate themselves. And so we had world-class experts testifying on particularly on COVID, but there was also a conversation there on vaccinations. And so I testified, and my message was, what's happened over the last 4 years is not new. It's been going on for 200 years. We've been violating bodily sovereignty. We've been injecting poisons under the guise of health. We've been taking away individual rights and freedoms. We've been violating informed consent. We've been undermining parental authority to make medical decisions for their children. And so it finally got so egregious that now we have thousands, if not millions on this planet that are demanding that we return to some kind of moral foundation that's based upon bodily sovereignty, individual choice. We have to end this tyranny.
We saw, and I've been taking a keen interest lately in what went on in Nazi Germany. Several documentaries have just come across in front of me, and I've looked at them with my wife, and we've been horrified. We were looking at a documentary on Auschwitz last night, and the medical tyranny that took place there. People deny what happened in Germany and Eastern Europe during the Holocaust, but that's a whole other story. People can go where they want to with that, but the fact is that Joseph Mengele and doctors in Nazi Germany did unspeakable things to humanity. And look at the price that they had to pay for that. They had to pay that price. But what we see now, and what we see as we go back through history, and I'm referring now also to a group in Australia called infected bloods. These are people who got blood products from back in the 1980s that were contaminated with HIV and Hep C and then covered up by government. And this medical tyranny has gone right through with the pelvic floor mesh drama with Johnson and Johnson, and the fact that Pfizer is one of the most highly fined and prosecuted companies in the world, but still manages to get by. What we're seeing in the last several decades in particular is Joseph Mengele on steroids, but put in a pretty box with a red ribbon of propaganda around it.
Right.
How do we beat that, apart from talking like we are now, knowing that this will be censored to the daylights? How do we beat this? How can we come together and form a parallel system where we can change the whole health narrative around the world?
Well, Graham, I too have been interested in Nazi Germany. I think what's happening now has us going and reflecting upon that period of human history. And, I think most people think that, oh, if I was in Germany at that time, I would have stood up to the Nazis.
No.
And I think what we learned over the last 4 years, most people would not. Most people would comply. And they would comply out of fear. They would comply out of convenience or comfort. And they would also comply because these tyrants are good at manipulating humanity. And I think what's happened over the last few years is that our natural compassion for one another has gotten weaponized. And people thought that wearing masks and getting an injection and standing 6 feet apart and beating up anybody who didn't follow that was the right thing to do. I believe that humanity is suffering because we don't actually have a solid moral foundation anymore.
Yep.
We have delegated authority to other people as opposed to developing our own innate moral authority. To me, until we develop a moral foundation where we recognize that we're capable of good and evil and learn how to discern the difference and stand up for good, I think we're always vulnerable to this kind of tyranny. We're up against some pretty dark forces. I resisted the use of the word evil throughout most of my lifetime. I always thought that people did the best they could. I now believe there is an evil force. There is an evil entity that is very powerful, and that if you allow an opening, it comes in and takes over. And so I think the way we deal with this, one is that we recognize that evil exists. Two is we recognize that we're vulnerable. We can be agents of good or evil, and we learn how to be much more discerning. We also have to, if we don't have freedom of speech, well, we can talk about these things and disagree and debate and wrestle with them. And through that, what's the expression of iron sharpens iron, develop strength of wisdom because of the exchange. We are a captured species. And so we have to defend the right to speech. We have to defend the right to have these kinds of conversations. We have to defend the right to have the wrong thoughts and put them out there and be challenged. I think that, my criticism of my country and my fellow citizens is that we have allowed ourselves to be parented by a nanny state. We have given away our responsibility to others, and we have to stand up and say, this is my responsibility. The medical decision is my responsibility. My body is my responsibility. Upholding rights and freedoms is my responsibility. One of the things that we've done, we've created a new book called A New Parent's Guide to Understanding Vaccination. And I've taken great pains to explain what informed consent is. And then I say, and it's our responsibility, the citizen's responsibility, to defend that right to make an informed decision. If we think somebody else is going to defend it for us, they're not.
Mm. Ted, it seems to me that there's a real problem with the education system. I mean, a lot of the things that you're speaking about could be solved by having some structure there in place that better teaches our children. I got told yesterday that the high schools are teaching the kids about sex toys. It's just amazing to me that they can talk about that sort of stuff, but we don't speak about the sorts of things that we need to speak about.
Well, I agree with you. I think our education system has been totally corrupted and captured as well, and it's now become a dangerous entity. It's undermining our ability to be free thinking, critically thinking beings, and it's also undermining the authority of parents in the family. And so I think we have to treat our education system with a lot of caution and concern. But I also wonder if in some ways we've done with our education system like we've done with our medical system, we've given that responsibility away to others, as opposed to saying that the education of my children is actually my responsibility. You know, one of the articles that I speak about in one of my books is it's an article I remember reading many years ago, and the title was "Who Tells the Stories That Our Children Hear?" And the author went on to explain that in previous times, and particularly in our Aboriginal communities, is that they would use storytelling as a way of passing on a moral code or a value code to the children. And nowadays, you ask the question, well, who tells the stories our children hear today? Well, I would suggest that the storytellers are those electronic devices that they've always got their eyes into. It's the television, it's the iPad, it's the iPhone, and so what we've done is we've allowed other people to tell our kids the stories. And these are people we don't know, and in many cases don't share our values. So I think we have to take back the responsibility of storytelling, so to speak.
100%. And there's no resilience. Every kid gets a prize. Nobody's a loser. I mean, the whole thing's just completely off the rails.
Yeah. Well, and John, I think that's by intention. When I stand back, I've looked in awe at how this cabal has captured every institution in my country, and I'm assuming in yours. And so our education is not safe, our medical system is not safe, our law enforcement, our courts, our regulatory agencies, our colleges of physicians and surgeons, our independent media. Like it appears that there is not one institution in our society that has not been captured. And so it's got to fall, and we have to rebuild anew. But the rebuilding, I believe, has to be, as I said a few minutes ago, on a moral foundation. What's our moral code? What's our social contract that cannot be violated? And we thought we had that in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms or Bill of Rights or whatever, but I would suggest, and I'm just as guilty. I probably spent almost no time in my adult life holding my elected representatives to account, and providing accountability and oversight and engaging them and demanding of them. And what we've got is here in Canada, we've got a government that's not accountable to the people. They have absolute disregard for the people of Canada, and I see that in your country and elsewhere. Somehow the world has been taken over by a dictatorial policy that thinks that they know better than we do what's in our best interest. And I saw a video last week where somebody said, I didn't sign up to co-parent with the government. I want a divorce. And I think that's what we need.
When you talk about who's telling the stories, I read a book many years ago. It was written about 2001, and the title escapes me at the moment, but the average Australian father spends 37 seconds a day in one-on-one communication with each of his children. And it seems almost implausible, but when you think about the treadmill that most families are on, there's no time for anything. And what that equates to, Ted, is that by the time your child is 6 years old, the television will have spoken to him more in that 6 years than you will in his entire lifetime. And who's telling the stories? Well, the mainstream media, which we now know as the mainstream propaganda. It's all propaganda, and what they're telling us is horrendous. And we have to find a way to stand against that. And what's even more telling is I compare it to the psychology around what happened in Nazi Germany, where so many people looked the other way because they realized it was easier to be one of the oppressors than one of the oppressed. That's alive and well in our country. There's no doubt about it. There are hate pages that are set up to denigrate people like us who are trying to find truth and bring it to light. And you can see that mentality playing out, the insult, the mockery, the childish bullying that goes on some of these pages is indicative of a country in crisis. And we are no better than what than the Germans were in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. We're definitely no better. We're no better than the Hebrews were in Jerusalem when they all yelled out, "Crucify him," when Christ was in Pilate's court. We're no better. And anyone who thinks that we're going to be different has got rocks in their head. We are in a battle between good and evil. We know that God's being taken out, and the more he's being taken out, the more darkness is replacing the void. We have to do something. And this leads me to the title of one of your books, and it's How Can I Wake Up When I Don't Know I'm Asleep, Ted? Tell us about that.
Well, what's interesting is that I had this notion that I was going to write a book, and I knew what the title was, How Can I Wake Up When I Don't Know I'm Asleep? But I didn't know what the book was about. And then I was invited by the local community paper in the community that I lived in to write a regular column in the paper. And often I would write, and my writing was meant to be provocative. It was meant to ask questions. I wanted to try to encourage my neighbors to think. And over a 7-year period, I wrote, I don't know, hundreds of articles. And what I did for that book is I took out 70 of what I thought were the best articles, essays that I wrote, and I put into a book. But the idea is we need to question what we think we know. And it happened for me with vaccines. I mean, like I said, I was like most people. I just thought safe and effective, necessary, away you go. And I had to lose a son to realize that I was being lied to, and to realize that I hadn't done my homework. And then it's only when you wake up to the lies that you realize that you were asleep. And one of the things that I ask myself every day, what do I believe today that I'm going to discover tomorrow wasn't true? And I think it's important for all of us to be humble enough and flexible enough in our arrogance about what we think we know, because we have been manipulated, deceived, lied to throughout our entire lives. I mean, I look at the many things now that I believe we've been lied to. Everything from 9/11 to man on the moon to Kennedy assassination. I mean, in my lifetime, it's like every significant cultural event I now question. Have I been told the truth about it?
So where does that leave society when everything we've trusted, we've already lost faith in all of our institutions, even the church? People have lost faith in the corporate church, charities, all those organizations that were out there meant to be good and to be holding government to account and all those sorts of things. The media, of course, at the top of that list. Where do we go when there's no faith in anything anymore? And the things that held us together, like I said in Auckland, that I couldn't countenance living in a world where Neil Armstrong didn't walk on the moon, because that day cemented my aviation career for me. I don't even want to contemplate that didn't happen. So where does that leave our belief systems, Ted?
Well, you're right. I mean, you start to realize that the foundation that you thought you were standing on is pretty fractured. And on one hand, that's pretty disconcerting and anxiety-inducing to think that. On the other hand, I think that it's important for us to learn how to discern truth from fiction, or truth from good from evil. And, I think what's probably common with all of our Commonwealth countries is that we've lived pretty decent lives, and we just assume that our governments are benevolent, and then we assume that our education system is sound, our medical system is acting in our best interest, our media is telling the truth. And because of that, I think, naive assumption, it's allowed those institutions to go rogue on our watch. Like I have to take some responsibility that all of these institutions have failed us during my lifetime. And how am I a part of it? How am I responsible for that? What did I do or not do? And I believe the outcome of this is I think people ought to be naturally more skeptical. They ought to ask more questions. And that doesn't mean you automatically believe that everybody's lying to you, but you don't automatically accept it as being the truth that can't be questioned. To me, truth doesn't mind being questioned. It loves to be questioned. It loves to be discovered. It's the falsehoods that don't want to be questioned. And so this movement afoot that there's now so much censorship that's happening tells me that they're promoting lies and deception because the truth doesn't mind those conversations. And I believe that the transforming of humanity is that we get better at discernment. We learn to listen to that voice of consciousness that's within all of us. I believe we have it, but it goes silent because we don't develop it, we don't honor it, we don't work it, we don't use it. It's like a muscle that atrophies.
Yeah, it's like the stop button in the airplane, John. We turn it down because we don't like the background hash.
That's true. Very true. Yeah, well, I suppose that brings us to the regulatory processes that are allegedly there to protect us, Ted. I mean, there'll be some out there that won't have the capacity to question like you're encouraging. That's why we do need some oversight. I mean, how do we protect those people?
How do we protect which people, John?
Those people that don't have the capacity to ask the questions. Those ones that are vulnerable.
Well, I think that everybody has the capacity. They just have to be. It has to be developed. It has to be taught. It has to be modeled. And so I think our work is around those of us that can see and have the courage to speak. Need to speak. We need to do exactly what you gentlemen are doing. Is you hold space for conversation. You have the courage to tell the truth, and even if you are punished for telling the truth, you persist because it's important that we model that kind of courageous discourse. For me, this is a hill for me to die on. I'm not going to be cowed into silence or compliance. And if that means the end of my life, I would rather, the expression, I want to die on my feet as opposed to on my knees.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave this world worse for my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
I believe that we are in an existential war. And, there are days I'm discouraged by how few see how tyrannical this world is. And maybe there's for some reason I can see it and others can't. And you gentlemen can see it and others can't. And it's a question that intrigues me because for me, it is so obvious I can't ignore it. And I would suggest, I'm guessing 80% of the population of the Canadian population, they don't see it, or even if they see it, they don't have the fortitude, the moral courage and the fortitude to stand up and address it. They take what's safe or what's comfortable. And, I think this is humanity's, as I said, existential crisis. And I believe that there's two paths that will go. One is that we will become extinct as a species. We'll become actually enslaved, not unlike cattle in a field. Or we will become transformed and we will be wiser, stronger, better, more courageous than we were before. In my counseling practice, one of the things that I would do is I would try to assess the maturity of the person that was sitting across from me. How old are they? Not chronologically. How old are they emotionally? Are they 12 years old? Are they 16? Are they 20? Are they 25? And one of the reasons I would do that is that I learned that trauma will arrest emotional development.
Yep.
And so if somebody's acting like a 12-year-old, I then become curious. Tell me about when you were 12.
Yeah.
And you have to work through the trauma to release it so that they can then begin to re-engage their maturing process. Well, when I ask the question of humanity, how old are they? I would say humanity in general is probably about 12 to 14 years old. We still haven't accepted the responsibility for our lives. We have an arrogance or an ignorance that sometimes gets us in trouble. And I believe that what we're being called to is stand up here and become adults.
It's fascinating to look at the history around what happened during World War II and to realize that much of the funding of Axis powers came from the United States. And the big bankers. I mean, we can see this played out now, and history cannot deny that that's what was going on. We're in a situation where somebody sent me a 2-minute clip of a speech by Klaus Schwab earlier this year, where he used the word force a couple of times, where he was talking about this new world that we're creating, and he emphasized the word force. And he talked about this can only be achieved with the cooperation of big business and government. Now, that is the definition of fascism. Right. So the son of a Nazi industrialist is now lecturing the world on how to control the global environment that we live in, socially, genetically, in every other way, digitally, the whole thing. And when you consider that the Nazi regime was bent on creating a master race in which they were destroying people who were mentally ill, they were destroying people who were handicapped, they destroyed people who were unable to work, they destroyed homosexuals, and they did this whole thing to get rid of the people they saw that were wasting oxygen and resources. The world hasn't changed. In fact, I think it's only gotten worse because more and more people are lending support to the whole nation.
Well, I would suggest that the Nazis didn't lose World War II.
Yeah.
And I actually think that there's an entity that's behind the Nazis that made the Nazis. And that entity, that force, that darkness, that evil, that I believe it's actually an anti-human agenda, is alive and well. And if anything, it is much more dangerous today than it was in the 1940s. And then you look back further in history, you look at ancient history, and it seems like that darkness comes around and rears its ugly head for a period of time, and then it has to be beaten back down, but it never disappears. So it appears. And maybe that's the nature of the human condition, is this battle of good and evil and light and dark. And we need to invest our time and resources into good and light.
Do you think that the taking down of these structures, these WHOs and the WEFs and all that will assist us in breaking through?
Well, to me, it's not enough just to take it down. I think what we have to do is we have to create something better. And the better has to be built, as I said, I believe, on a solid moral foundation, on a social contract that honors individual rights and freedoms, honors free speech, honors bodily integrity, honors the family unit, honors God. And if we don't, I think that there's two actions here. One is that we have to disassemble the structures that are no longer serving humanity. But we can't put all of our energy there because we also have to put energy into the creating of the new. What does that look like? Yep. We have to dream a new dream here. Now, dreaming the new dream, we can't put all of our energy there either, because these bad guys need to be held to account. So, there are those that are focused on holding the bad guys to account, and I'm grateful for them. And in some ways, I feel like I get to put more of my time and energy into being, what kind of a world do we want to live in? What's our what's our moral code? What's our Bill of Rights? What's our social contract? Uh, what is our God? Who is our God?
I think when we create organizations, whether they start with the right intentions or not, they do attract psychopaths, people who like to control. And that's evident. That's been going on since the Garden of Eden. Let's face it. We're in a situation where we've not only got to construct something new, we've got to construct a new way of constructing something new. So to me, it's kind of like we're sitting at a railway station that's got two platforms, and we're in the middle. The trains come down either side. We've got to create a train that moves better, that has less impact, that does more of the work that it's meant to do, to enable people to get from one train onto the other and say, I'm going to go on that train. And so what we've been really buoyed by in recent weeks even is this growth of integrative medicine and alternative healthcare, because we have a disease management system around the world. That's what the WHO sits on top of, disease management. They're not interested in health. They just want chemical solutions to everything. But we have to start with good agricultural practices, healthy soil, maintaining our topsoils, making sure all the nutrients are in the soil to produce good, healthy food, ensuring that our immune system is allowed to restore us naturally by the use of good, healthy foods, living in an environment that's allowed to go the way that it goes without man-made interference. So we're seeing an attack on all of those things, agriculture, the climate, and health, all happening at the one time under this umbrella of United Nations, WHO, WEF, and whoever's the puppeteer above that. We've been buoyed by the fact that there's some incredible organizations building. You've got Tess Laurie's World Council of Health. You've got Professor Ian Brighthope in Australia doing amazing work for 4 decades on the world of wellness. We met some incredible people in New Zealand who are really working hard behind the scenes to bring about changes in the way that we view health and fight disease, and good hygiene and good nutrition, all foundational to this. And there is a massive group of people working on solutions. And John and I spent time with a couple of them in Professor Angus Dalgleish, the oncologist from the UK, and the wonderful Dr. Paul Marrick, who is just an incredible symbol of the fight for this. He has lost everything, Ted. You may know he's lost everything. He's even been banned by Amazon. He can't sell his books on Amazon. He's lost, family. He's lost his wife. He's lost his kids, won't talk to him. His collegiate won't talk to him. He's been banned. He's lost his license, he and Dr. Pierre Corey. But all of these people haven't gone away. So we need to find a way to unite all of this energy that's being used for good to bring about a change, to create a train that everyone's going to get on. Because if everyone says, no, the WHO train, it's past its use-by date. We've got to get on this new healthcare system. We've got to get into this new agricultural system, this new financial system. But it has to start somewhere. And I think most people are daunted by the fact that we can't kick it off right now. But, a journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with the first step, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you know what? I actually think that we're making a difference.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of people that are doing good work, and they're in every country around the world. There are lights that are lighting up the darkness. And I believe that, they wouldn't be attacking Dr. Merrick if he was insignificant.
Yeah.
The fact that they're throwing everything at him tells me that they're afraid of him, or Pierre Corey, or Peter McCullough, or you name it. And I think I think this is actually a really exciting time to be on the planet.
Yeah.
One is that we are finding amazing people. Two is that we get to participate, I believe, as I said, in the evolution and transformation of humanity. And I believe ultimately good does prevail. Evil destroys itself. And, I just find that the last 4 years have been, in some ways, as disturbing as it's been, it's also been the most exciting time of my life.
Yeah.
And I have met the most amazing people that I never would have met had life just continued and mosey along the way it normally does. Um, Beautiful souls that inspire me to be bigger than I am and to stand up and do more and uh, be more creative and be more discerning. And they sharpen me with their iron. And I think this is a blessed time to be alive. And
Couldn't agree with you more.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I think is there losses and others? Sure. I'm here where I am today because my mother-in-law is passing, likely from the injection. And so the family is going through sorrow of the loss of a beautiful soul. And yet, that's part. I mean, I believe my son came to serve humanity, and his suffering motivated me, which has inspired others. And so I thank him for his gift of sacrifice. And
Yeah.
we can either become victims in this, or we can become creators in this, right?
I was talking to a very dear friend of ours just the other day about grief. He's going through incredible grief at the moment. His best friend, his very best friend, had a fight. They had a fight over COVID mismanagement in Australia, where our friend was saying, no, this is being badly done, and the other guy was defending it. And it got to a stage where he walked out of his friend's house, and they never got a chance to put it right. And just a few days ago, the guy who walked out, the guy was saying the government's doing all the right things, died at age 62, found dead in his sleep.
Right.
And our friend is really struggling with the fact that they never got to talk about it before. They knew that they wanted to, and trying to get him to understand that grief has a purpose, and that purpose it can be building, can be encouraging in so many ways. And I said, the big thing that has happened to you is that God is shining a spotlight on a defect of your character through the passing of your friend. And that spotlight is being shone on your pride, because it was your pride and his that prevented you from putting it right before he passed away. And so everything in life is an opportunity to develop character. I firmly believe that. And I believe the last 4 years has been incredibly character building. I'm sharing a screen with a guy who's more like a brother to me than my own brother. And that's a friendship. We have a faith and a trust in each other that is marrow deep. Nothing will ever shake that. Many will try, but nothing will shake it. And we're surrounded by incredible courage in the most unlikely sources, John. We remember that beautiful lady, Ellie, that made all the poppies.
Yeah.
And a beautiful old lady, wheelchair bound, who thought the only way she could make a difference was to hand crochet thousands and thousands of little red poppies for us to wear at protest marches. And then you have the likes of, Ted that we're talking to now, and Meryl Dorey and Anita Huffmeister, who've been out at the front line copping a lot of the flack. But behind them, there's this incredible support group. There's this incredible supply line of spirit that keeps us all going. And that's what we've got to harness. And we're going to be facing hard times with the misinformation bills being passed all around the world. How we keep this message going. We have to form a really strong spiritual connection. And I think we all should be stop mining for darkness. I think we should stop digging down rabbit holes to try and find more and more evil. We know that evil exists. You don't have to search for it. Hey, it's been discovered already. Don't worry about it. We've got to focus on the solutions linked on one rail with another rail of accountability. And Tess Laurie said, John, and I think we had a disagreement, you disagreed with her, that Royal Commissions, it's a waste of time. We just got to get about healing people. Well, the thing is that there are some people who are gifted at healing, and there are other people who are gifted at holding people to account. So that doesn't mean the two tracks can't roll together. Is that your view, Ted? Do you think we need to have accountability with healing?
But first of all, we can't trust if there's no accountability, and we have to get back to some trust. But I believe that these, like the National Citizens Inquiry, is where the truth gets spoken, and we have to hear the truth. We have to speak the truth, in order for people to heal. And it's not enough by itself, but I believe we can't heal when lies still hold the ground. And so these opportunities for people to come forth and speak are, I think, really important. And not only does the truth come out, but people find their voice. And when they find their voice, they find their strength, they find their courage, and they become a different person by speaking truth. And so I believe it's an important process, but I believe it has to be citizen-led. You can't ask the government to do an investigation into their behavior. They'll never do it. So that's why we've conducted a citizen-led, citizen-funded inquiry here in Canada.
And what were the findings?
Well, you can find them as we have compiled the largest library of testimony on the government's response to COVID under oath in the world. We've developed the information was presented to 4 commissioners who wrote a final report. That report contains over 400 recommendations. So that we've done a good body of work. Now, at this point, the government still ignores us. But I know that information is out there. It exists. It shines its light. And that truth won't be hidden. It eventually will find its way. We're conducting hearings again in 2 weeks. We've opened up the conversation to more than COVID. We're now asking the question, are children safe in Canada? And we are inundated with people who want to testify at these hearings. And every single one of them is testifying because they firmly believe our children are not safe. And they're not. So I'm very much looking forward to these hearings, but there's power in those conversations. We have a bumper sticker that says truth matters.
Are children safe in Australia, John?
Well, I don't think so, Hoodie. If they're not safe in Canada, they're not safe here. You've only got to look at these vaccines.
Exactly. Once again, I go back to a very courageous guy in Australia called Charles McKenzie, who's been heading up for 30 years the battle against the infected blood scandal and what happened with him. And now he and his cohort were affected as young children. Some of them because their mothers were given infected blood products that were passed on to them. They've been fighting tyranny. In the UK, he gave evidence in the UK inquiry over there, which has brought about, I think, a £5 billion payout to victims who are getting millions in support. And the Australian government won't even fund the medication for those people who've had up to 3 liver transplants because of this. I mean, the tyranny just goes on and on and on and on. And clearly, way back then, when we thought Australia was the lucky country, children were not safe. We were not safe when we were being vaccinated back then either.
Right.
And Meryl Dorey and Anita Huffmeister and all those courageous people with the AVN have been saying the same thing. And more people need to wake up. So I keep mentioning the infected blood scandal deliberately because that needs more awareness. Because when we unpack that, or when we tie that with the vaccination scandal and the COVID scandal, we tie all that together, you can see that there's an inexplicable link in the whole thing that needs to be opened up. And when we open that up and examine that, we see all the other garbage that's going on in the dead fish we call our government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a dead fish. That's a good way to put it.
It is. It's a rotten fish, and it rots from the head. Look at Canada.
Yeah.
Canada is rotting from the head, and the head is Trudeau.
Yeah.
And are there any more despicable people on the planet than Trudeau, the charmer of Canada, who's killing his people? I mean, and we've got idiots in Australia running the country like Anthony Albanese, we call the Elmer Fudd of Australian politics, is an absolute idiot and allowing things to happen on his watch that will be regretted for generations to come throughout history. And you've got that other clown from New Zealand who's no longer there, who's now in Harvard University trying to find ways to stop us from speaking, in Jacinda Ardern, whose main focus in Harvard University is misinformation and disinformation. And who are the most prolific purveyors of that misinformation and disinformation? The governments.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, our lawyer that we retained, he said to me years ago, he said, governments are the most dangerous organizations in the world. And they need to be treated as such.
I think what we're seeing all around the world, isn't it? It's one of the same. I mean, we said the same thing the other day, didn't we, Hoodie, when we're in the shopping centre? I mean, everything's the same.
Everything's the
You go to
same.
Vietnam, you go to America, you go to Australia, everything's the same. The shop's the same. Like there doesn't seem to be any real differences nowadays. They're just replicating this corporate mess everywhere.
The world's
Well,
been run by Bond villains.
what's amazing to me is how well orchestrated, how well coordinated this takedown of humanity has been. I mean, like you said, it's everywhere, and it's at every level of government. It's within every institution. I mean, it's the rare judge or the rare police officer who stands up and upholds our
Yeah.
rights and freedoms. And this is, it's just not a couple of bad apple countries. It's pervasive throughout the human condition. And so this entity, this force, this evil that has orchestrated this, I just think, boy, if you took your ability to organize for good, we could be a completely different planet in almost no time. And so, this is a good and evil battle, and I'm just delighted I get to be on the side of good.
That's the one benefit. How did your National Citizens Inquiry rate Trudeau, for example?
Well, I mean, the inquiry is it's meant to be, it's not meant to be political. It's meant to be independent. We heard testimony from over 350 witnesses during the 27 days of hearings. But when you look at the results of the inquiry, you look at the commissioner's report. I mean, it describes Canada as a failed state. This is no longer what we thought it was. We don't have a representative government. We don't have a healthcare system that is interested in our health. They're interested in disease because that's where the money is. We have a media that is captured. I mean, it describes a pretty dark situation, but it has to be acknowledged. We can't heal holding on to the lie or believing the lie. And so I believe the National Citizens Inquiry is part of our healing by shining a light on the darkness.
Well, like Australians, I think Canada is one of the very few spots in the world where we can get some good things happening. I mean, I remember, Hoodie, when we were in Canberra there, and there was the farmers going on their convoy with their trucks and tractors and whatever else in Canada, and I mean that gave great rise to everyone that was in Australia, didn't it? That someone else was prepared to take the tyranny on.
Oh, the truckers Canberra in Canada spurred on what happened in Canberra with the largest rally in Australian history. Canada led the way.
What I've said in my speeches is that if the history of this time in Canada is accurately written, one of the most important events in Canadian history will be the truckers' convoy. I mean, that was a miraculous experience. It transformed this country from what was a very dark place. People were in despair, and the sense of hopelessness was so pervasive. And then these truckers started to roll, and then the people came out on the overpasses by the thousands and tens of thousands. And, they, over a 2-week period, they lifted us out of a very dark place. I think that if it wasn't for the truckers' convoy, we would still be a lockdown country. And so God bless them. And what I say is the only politician I'm going to vote for is somebody who's a trucker. So.
How are Canadians viewing Trudeau at this time? Is he still their poster boy?
No, they're clamoring they want an election, and they want an election now. Trudeau is, able to convince the other parties to go along with him. You got to wonder what kind of benefits they're getting from keeping Trudeau in power. But I don't think I mean, the number of F. Trudeau flags that are flying in this country probably rival the amount of Canadian flags flying in the country. So, no, he's a hated man. And I think you talked about psychopaths before. He is a psychopath, but it takes more than one psychopath to bring this country down. And I hold every member of Parliament who voted for the Emergency Act to take down the truckers. Those that impose the vaccine mandates, those that shut down businesses, those that forced masking, that if people lost their jobs because they wouldn't participate in a genetic experiment. Every single one of those that participated in that, to me, are criminals, and they need to go to jail. And I think Trudeau ought to spend the rest of his life in jail, and I know that many Canadians feel the same way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need more of that. So your message to young parents who hopefully will be watching this, it'll be shared on various networks. What would you say to our audience now who are about to give birth or have young children?
Well, what I say is that I believe the vaccine decision is the most important and probably the most difficult decision that they'll make as a parent. And, I talk about how, the young parents that I know, they invest hours into researching a car seat or a baby crib or a stroller, and they need to take that and multiply that by 10 times of what they need to do to make the vaccine decision. And so what we've tried to do in our new parent guide is to make that information available to them. And we start off the book talking about informed consent. What is it? It means that you have the right and the responsibility to make this decision. Do not give it away to somebody else. Do not make it on blind faith. And then we talk about, what is lost by these injections. You actually undermine the body's natural ability to heal from disease. This is a permanent harming of the immune system. It's not like taking an aspirin that wears off after 3 hours. This is a permanent altering of the body. They need to understand the significance of that decision. And then what we do is we go through each of the 16 or 17 disease conditions that we've got a vaccine for in this country. And we help them to understand what it is. Like, parents today don't know what chickenpox is. They've never seen it. They don't know what measles is. They've never seen it. And what they know of it is what, our distorted media and medical system tell them. So they've learned to be afraid of these things. And so we say, measles presents as a rash. It lasts, 10 to 14 days, et cetera, may be accompanied by a fever of this amount. And 99.99% of our children respond and become stronger as a result of that experience. And we talk about the vaccine that's indicated. So we help them make the decision. What is the disease? What's the risk of the disease? What's the vaccine? What's the risk of the vaccine? And the bottom line is none of the vaccines, as you know, on the childhood schedule have been proven to be safe. None of them were tested against a true placebo. So our medical system is lying to us about the safety and efficacy and the necessity of vaccination. And parents need to understand that they already have an incredibly designed immune system from God that works beautifully. And what you have to do is you have to feed it. You have to give it what it needs to be healthy. And vaccinations is injecting poison. And you don't make a healthy child by injecting poison. It's as simple as that.
Johnny.
Yeah, well, I think that's excellent advice. I mean, the fact that you related that to parents investigating about a stroller or about a car seat, I mean, that's a perfect way to package it up, because a lot of effort does go into researching those things, and so it's very important that people actually do some research and read some of the books that are around. There's some fantastic literature. We should really get all those books put onto the website about the vaccines, Hoodie. If they're not already there, I'm not sure if they are, but it's probably a good idea.
Yeah,
well, I can send you that list if you like.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, Graham.
we have a list here. We have a list of links. Vaccine Choice Canada, National Citizens Inquiry. Ted's books can be found at uptoeveryone.com. Is that right? Up to
It
everyone.
is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And I was just going to say, in the new parents guide, we list at the end of the book resources, and like there are literally hundreds and hundreds of books that have been written on the topic of vaccination. And a parent only really needs to pick up one, and if they seriously read one of those books, they would realize that this is a much bigger decision that they understand, and they need to do their homework. And we're trying to reach parents during pregnancy or even pre-pregnancy, because once you start down the vaccination path, it's hard to stop them. It's like a train that gets run away. We want them to understand that we're actually putting out a mini book called Pregnancy and Vaccination that should be ready in the next month. And we list in the book what the vaccine manufacturer actually says in their product monographs about the safety testing of the vaccine for pregnancy. And every single one of the 6 vaccines that they now recommend in this country for pregnant moms, the manufacturer says there's no evidence of safety. In their own words, they say that. And to me, when you see that all by itself, why would you play Russian roulette with your baby?
No, you wouldn't.
well, it's a testimony to the incredible skill of those on the dark side, that people like us have been living in that darkness for as long as we have. I can't believe that I've been unaware as I have been, and I've raised a couple of daughters, and my wife and I have 23 grandkids and a great grandchild between us. We've already lost one to SIDS. We've had one who's had very dramatic reactions to vaccines as an infant. And what does it take to wake people up? Your book title says it all. How can I wake up when I don't even know I'm asleep? Well, we have woken in fright. And the thing is about waking up is when you realize that a burglar at the door or an axe murderer at the door is trying to get in, you don't go back to sleep. And none of us will ever go back to sleep. And for those who keep criticizing those of us who are waking up and trying to share a truth with you, what you're doing is you're abusing the people who are banging on your door telling you your house is on fire. And what if they're right? What if they're right? And you need to either make an opinion one way or the other or back off. Sitting on the fence is not an option. When you sit on the fence, you're enabling evil to continue. And all it takes for evil to continue is for people of goodwill to do nothing. So,
well, and the other thing, Graham, is that the movement is always in one direction. Nobody's on our side and then says, geez, I'm wrong, and then goes to the other side. The movement is all from people that were asleep and finally wake up and come to our side. And so we welcome them with open arms. I mean, I wish that so many people didn't have to be harmed before humanity wakes up. But you know what? My son had to be harmed before I woke up. So I have a lot of space in my heart for that.
You can't argue with that, John.
No.
Well, I hope we get to have more of these conversations with you, Ted. We feel after our trip to New Zealand that there is an amazing network that has been built. There are several networks around the world. And if we can combine all of that into one impressive power for good and to stand in the light, I mean, that's a lightness that darkness couldn't survive in. And if only we can pull all that together, and I'm sure there are synergies in all our 3 former Commonwealth or Commonwealth countries that are now acting in anything other than Commonwealth. I think we need to pull all that together because we can intensify this light. 3 flames are better than 1 in increasing light. So I just hope.
And look at this. We it's already happened. We found each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final comments, John?
No, I think that's a good way to rest things. I think people just need to do their research, Woody. That's the one thing that's got to come out of this. We've got to encourage young mothers and fathers to just research what's going on, as you would anything else.
Well, we're just asking the questions, everybody. We're putting a point of view to you and we're asking the questions. Science cannot progress without debate, and science cannot progress in an atmosphere of censorship. And that's what they're trying to do. Clearly, Ted, they're wanting to shut down this kind of communication as quickly as possible because they know that the dam wall is about to burst and they want to minimize the damage and give as many of them time to get onto the lifeboats as they can. How's misinformation going in Canada? Is that being trodden on at the moment, the bill?
Well, we have the same kinds of bills, and the problem is that the biggest source of misinformation is our government and our and our public health. You know, if those laws applied to them, I'd be all for those bills. But we
Yeah.
know we know it's not a genuine effort to stop manipulation and deception. It's an effort to silence the truth. And so to me, it just reveals who they are that much more. Again, I believe that those who love the truth welcome these kinds of conversations. And it's only those that are lying to us that don't want their lies to be exposed. And so to me, it's another part of the revealing. And it also gives us an opportunity to stand up and demonstrate our courage and our integrity. And so again, I embrace this time. It's enabling me to become somebody that I wasn't in my prior lifetime. So
I thought my whole 71 years was about flying airplanes. What a joke. Well, that was just a stepping stone to be doing what we're doing now. I mean, to share a stage with luminaries like Gus Dalgleish and Paul Marrick and David Charalambous in Auckland was that's something that would never have happened if I hadn't.
Yeah, David's a pretty fine man, isn't he? I spent some time with him this summer.
Yeah,
beautiful soul. Yeah,
yeah,
but you're right. You know, we're your life is just taking off now. You thought you thought flying planes was where you took off.
And John has set aside his career as 25 years of paramedic. He's probably doing more to heal in the last 4 years without wearing the uniform than he did when he wore it.
So true.
You never know.
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
Let's bring this. Go on.
I think we're living bigger lives than we lived before, and you know what? I feel very grateful for this time.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't mind a good sleep though. And I wouldn't mind putting the boat in the river and go and catch a few fish. That'd be really good.
Would be good.
Yeah. Anyway, we better bring this to a close with a prayer before finalizing the interview. Dear Lord, Father in heaven, we need you now more than ever, Lord, because you are the light. And Father, in a world where you're being extracted, the darkness is increasing. And all it takes to change the world is to flick a switch. And darkness is the absence of light. So it will help us to fill every dark crevice of this dying world with a light that will rejuvenate it and restore its spirit. Father God, we thank you for people like Ted and all those amazing human beings who are involved in these organizations, risking everything for the sake of truth. We pray that our leaders who have gone down the wrong pathway and their advisors will realize that they have done the wrong thing and repent and apologize to the people and make amends. And yes, face the music. They need to be held to account, not only for the good of the planet, but for their own good as well. Because they will be held to account one day, and it's best to face that music now than then. So Lord, we pray for them. I know it's strange, but we pray for those who have done this, that they will find the way, the truth, and the life as well. We thank you for this opportunity to share this message to as many people as we can, and we ask that it be shared with good hope and good spirit. May we live in the love and mercy of God, in the compassion of Jesus, and may we link together to form a bond that will never be broken, is our prayer in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Ted,
Gentlemen, thank you both.
Much. Can we get you back on more often? We'd like to get you back on quite a bit if possible. There are synergies and we need to exploit them.
I'd be glad to, love to.
All right,
and send me the link when you've got this ready so that I can share it with my audience. So
we sure will. And Johnny, you've often been heard to say,
you just couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't make this stuff up. That's for sure. Stay out of the trees, everybody. Don't forget what you did yesterday got you to today. Don't despair. They've taken a lot of things off you, but they can't take your serenity. And don't forget, people only drive you crazy if you give them the keys. So go out, get into the sun, go for a walk, share your heart with somebody else today. If you love somebody and you haven't told them, take example from my friend who we talked about earlier. His best mate died before they got a chance to clear the air. Make sure you do it because you don't know how important it might be. God bless you all. Thank you for watching Club Grubbery. We'll chat very soon. Our next interview coming your way in a couple of nights' time is a great panel discussion with Dr. Robert Altman and Professor Gigi Foster from University of New South Wales. And it's going to be a ripper, this one. We're looking forward to that. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Club Grubbery. Bye for now.